One of the ways that we can gauge whether justice is being done is by looking to see if justice is being applied equally. And equally means that if you have two guys who do similar or roughly the same thing, they are charged and prosecuted in the same way, and they receive sort of the same penalty or a similar penalty. Yesterday, I went on Joe Walsh's podcast. In fact, it's out today. You can see it. You can hear it on Spotify or watch it on YouTube. It was actually a very lively and respectful conversation of a kind that really doesn't happen a whole lot today. But we were talking about January 6th, and Joe was pressing me, well, don't you agree, Dinesh, it was wrong for people to go inside the Capitol? And I go, yeah, it was. And I said that, look, there are people who committed misdemeanors. They went in there. They didn't mean to break the law, but they did break the law. They didn't do any vandalism. They were completely peaceful, and they left shortly thereafter. Well, those people should get a misdemeanor, which basically means you get a warning or some community service. But you're not going to take a 75-year-old grandmother, I'm giving you an actual case. In fact, I had Pamela Hemphill on the show, and lock them up for 60 days because they walked into the Capitol for 10 minutes. This is just downright outrageous. And you know it's outrageous because it doesn't happen to anyone else. If you look at the massive riots that emerged in Portland in the aftermath of George Floyd, we're now talking about from summer of 2020, prosecutors dismissed a substantial number. I mean, they dismissed outright more than 1/3 of the cases. Think about it. These are cases that have, in many cases, felony charges. 4 defendants were charged with assaulting federal officers. They just dismissed the charges. They didn't even bring charges against them. And this was, by the way, for the actions outside the Mark O. Hatfield U.S. courthouse. And then let's zoom into a single case to see what happens when they do bring charges. So this is the Biden DOJ. The same DOJ that is now arresting Trump supporters, as I say, 2.25 years later, 26 months later, you're looking at excessive prison sentences. And so let's run a little bit of a comparison. Here's a guy, his name is Dakota, D-A-K-O-T-A-H, Horton, arrested in August of 2020 for assault of a federal police officer. So I'm picking a fairly serious case. What happened? This was outside the Mark Hatfield courthouse. Officers were trying to disperse the crowd. It says, quote, violent opportunists proceeded to attack law enforcement officers by throwing hard objects, glass bottles, and explosive devices. This guy approaches a cop who was clearly marked. He was wearing actually police uniform, and he is accused of striking this guy repeatedly with a baseball bat. Wow. Now, he was charged, and the charge is assault with a deadly weapon against a police officer, and that carries 20 years in prison. So far, so good. So did this guy spend, months or even years in prison awaiting a trial? No. He's actually released from custody in October 2020. So here we go. He's arrested in August, September, October, he's out. In fact, I'm looking at the release. And I'm looking to see if it has a date. Yes, October 28, 2020. So 2.5 months after his arrest, he is released. Now, he comes up for trial. He makes a plea deal. A plea deal on a charge that has 20 years in prison. So did he get 10 years, 15 years? No. As it turns out, he got 24 months. 24 months in prison for a violent assault with a deadly weapon against a police officer. That's what the judge gives him. And again, from the documents, defendant doesn't have a criminal history. He's performed well on pre-trial release, meaning he didn't commit any more crimes. And he, quote, accepted responsibility and has expressed remorse. And for this, the DOJ proposes and the judge agrees, 2 years in prison. Now, just contrast that with this guy named Julian Cater. Julian Cater is the guy who sprayed Brian Sicknick with bear spray. Now, no one is even alleging that that bear spray killed Brian Sicknick. It was actually part of a scuffle between officers and the crowd. And this guy argues, Julian Cater, that I was just trying to basically protect myself. And yes, he did spray the bear spray. And I'm not saying again that he shouldn't be prosecuted. But again, he gets 90 months. So 90 months in prison for bear spray versus 24 months in prison for assaulting an officer with a deadly weapon. If that doesn't make sense to you, it shouldn't. It doesn't make sense to anybody. It shows the deeply inequitable application of law. And that's one definition of injustice. It's not simply did you break the law. If you're speeding and you get a $100 ticket and I'm doing the same thing on the same highway or a different highway and I'm given 1 year in prison, then there's something wrong, not with me or with you, but with the law. Or at least with the application, with the enforcement of law. And that's the problem here with the Biden DOJ. They're showing flagrant disregard for equality of justice under the law.